You've heard about the Book of Enoch, the story of angels who crossed a forbidden line, of giants who walked the earth, and a flood meant to wipe it all away. But what if that wasn't the whole story? What if there was another ancient text, hidden for centuries, left out of most Bibles? A text that fills in the blanks Enoch left behind, and maybe even rewrites the origin of evil itself. This is the Book of Jubilees, and what it says about angels, giants, and the divine order of the universe will shake everything you thought you knew. This isn't just another retelling of Genesis or Exodus. Jubilees is different. It's like an encrypted version of the Bible, one that breaks time into cosmic patterns, resets the timeline, and paints a strange new picture of good, evil, and everything in between. The patriarchs, they weren't just early believers. They were keepers of divine law, long before Moses ever received the tablets. And the calendar it follows, not lunar, not even human, but solar, like it was handed down from heaven itself. The Book of Jubilees is sometimes called Little Genesis, but don't let that nickname fool you. This isn't a simplified version. It's a total reprogramming. It restructures time into cycles of 49 years, called Jubilees, as if all of history unfolds not randomly, but in rhythm with a divine clock. Everything has a place. Everything has its moment. And nothing, not even the fall of angels, is out of sync. But here's where it gets strange. While Genesis gives us a narrative of events, Jubilees feels almost coded. Hidden inside these timelines are laws, warnings, patterns, and a growing tension between two versions of reality. One governed by God's order, and another creeping in from chaos. It's no surprise the Book of Jubilees was beloved by the Essenes, a secretive group living out in the desert, custodians of the Dead Sea Scrolls. They saw something in it that others missed, something dangerous, maybe even too dangerous for the mainstream. That's probably why it was left out of most versions of the Bible, because it hints at something behind the scenes, a second layer, a shadow narrative running parallel to the one we've been told. And what's at the center of that shadow? The Watchers. Now, if you're familiar with the Book of Enoch, you already know this story. A group of angels assigned to watch over humanity, who instead fell from grace by taking human women as wives and birthing giants, the Nephilim. These giants filled the earth with violence and chaos until God decided to wipe the slate clean with a flood. That's Enoch's version. It's dramatic, mythic, cosmic rebellion. But Jubilees, it plays it differently, subtler, like a courtroom transcript instead of a fantasy epic. In Jubilees, the Watchers aren't portrayed as rebels from the start. Instead, they're sent by God to help humanity, to guide, protect, and teach. But some of them fail. They're tempted. They fall. And in that failure, they unleash a chain reaction of corruption. In other words, it wasn't a heavenly mutiny. It was a mission gone wrong. That difference matters, because it reframes the story. In Enoch, the fall of the Watchers is cosmic treason. In Jubilees, it's a divine assignment that spirals into disaster. That shift in tone, from open rebellion to tragic failure, turns the focus from villains to consequences. That shift in tone, from open rebellion to tragic failure, turns the focus from villains to consequences. Because in the Book of Jubilees, the fall of these angels doesn't just birth giants. It fractures something deeper, something in the fabric of creation itself. The Nephilim, these hybrid offspring of divine and human blood, aren't just giants in size. They're giants in consequence. Jubilees paints them not just as physical monsters, but as spiritual infections. Their very presence disrupts the natural balance, corrupts the timeline, and throws the world out of alignment with heaven. Violence spreads, blood spills, civilization spirals. And with every act of destruction, the Nephilim are pushing the world toward the edge of total collapse. But here's where Jubilees gets even darker. In the book of Enoch, there's still a glimmer of redemption. The Watchers plead with Enoch to intercede on their behalf. There's a hope, however faint, that maybe, just maybe, they can be forgiven. Jubilees, no such hope, no bargaining, no intercession. God's response is cold, final, absolute. Divine judgment is coming. And this time, no ark of mercy will save the guilty. When you read chapters 5 and 6 of Jubilees, the tone shifts entirely. It's legal, harsh, almost clinical. The Nephilim are not just byproducts of forbidden love. They're framed as living violations of divine law, abominations that broke the order of creation itself. Jubilees doesn't linger on emotion. It doesn't romanticize the fall. It names the sin, declares the verdict, and delivers the sentence. And that sentence is the flood. But this flood, in the worldview of Jubilees, isn't just about washing away physical corruption. It's a cosmic reset, a reboot of the divine timeline. The world had slipped off its axis, veered from the calendar of heaven. The flood brings it back. Think about that. This isn't just a punishment. It's a recalibration, a purification of time itself. And the spiritual fallout doesn't stop when the waters recede. Because just like Enoch, Jubilees acknowledges what happens to the Nephilim after they die. Their bodies may drown, but their spirits, they remain, disembodied, angry, and bound to the earth. Evil doesn't die, it transforms. In fact, this is where Jubilees takes us into territory most texts won't touch. In chapter 10, we get something chilling. Noah prays to God, not just for safety from the flood, but for protection from these lingering spirits, the souls of the Nephilim, now turned into wandering demons. And what does God do? He doesn't wipe them all out. Instead, he binds 90% of them, locks them away. But 10%, he leaves them free, on purpose, under the command of a dark and mysterious figure. That 10%, the evil spirits left free, they're not aimless. They don't wander without purpose. They have a commander, a dark figure rarely mentioned in sermons, barely known outside of ancient texts, Mastema. In the book of Jubilees, Mastema is not just another demon. He's not a shadowy background character. He's a central force, a figure so cold, so methodical, he almost feels more terrifying than Satan himself. Because unlike the chaos of typical demons, Mastema is organized, legalistic, bound by divine permission. He's not a rogue villain. He's allowed to act, licensed by heaven to do what he does. And what he does is test humanity, tempt us, accuse us, break us down to reveal what's hidden in the heart. His name, Mastema, comes from a Hebrew root that means hatred, hostility, or enmity. He is literally the embodiment of opposition, the prince of enmity. And his role is both simple and horrifying: to create resistance, provoke sin, and pressure the soul until it reveals its true nature. Sound familiar? It should. Because in many ways, Mastema is the Old Testament's version of a prosecuting attorney, but with no interest in redemption. He's like the Satan of the book of Job, but colder, sharper, more involved. Unlike in Enoch, where the spiritual evil stems mostly from the Watchers and their teachings, Jubilees puts Mastema at the helm of ongoing spiritual corruption. The Watchers might have fallen, but Mastema stayed in operation. And here's the terrifying part. Mastema doesn't just appear in one moment of biblical history. He shows up again and again, behind the curtains of major events, manipulating outcomes, whispering destruction into key moments. He tries to kill Moses as an infant. He's the one who suggests to God that Abraham should be tested, by sacrificing Isaac. He's the force behind wars, plagues, betrayals, always working, always within divine boundaries, always seeking a crack in humanity's resolve. And God allows it, not because he's indifferent, but because in the logic of Jubilees, even evil must serve a divine function. Mastema isn't an outlaw, he's a necessary adversary, a tool in the cosmic justice system. And while that might sound paradoxical, it's central to how Jubilees views the spiritual world. Evil has its place, not to be celebrated, not to be followed, but to be endured as a test of the soul. So think about that. While most of us imagine good versus evil as a battle of opposites, Jubilees offers something stranger, a system where evil is managed, allowed, even instructed, to expose the truth of who we are. Mastema isn't there to destroy the world with brute force. He's there to tempt us just enough to reveal whether we'll choose righteousness or fall into chaos. He doesn't drag us into sin. He opens the door and watches who walks through. He's not the dragon of Revelation. He's something more subtle, more psychological. The voice that twists truth, the shadow that dares you to look away. The prosecutor who watches you fall and whispers, "See, I told you so." And here's what's chilling. Even after the flood, even after the destruction of the Nephilim, even after Noah's prayer, Mastema is still there, still active, still guiding the remaining 10% of spirits left loose on the earth. He doesn't lead armies, he leads whispers. He doesn't conquer kingdoms, he corrupts hearts. Understanding Mastema reshapes how we view not just the book of Jubilees, but the entire biblical story. Because once you see him, you start to wonder how many of the moments we thought were just tests from God were actually carried out through him. Think about it. That moment when Abraham is told to sacrifice Isaac, it wasn't just divine drama. It was Mastema's suggestion, his idea. He puts forward the test, and God allows it, not to destroy Abraham, but to reveal what's in him. And Abraham passes, but what about the ones who fail? Throughout Jubilees, Mastema appears again and again, not in fire and brimstone, but in moments of hesitation, of temptation, of small compromise. He's not the enemy with a sword. He's the shadow at the edge of every decision. And Jubilees doesn't just point him out as an ancient figure, it leaves us with the uncomfortable implication that he's still around, still active, still testing. The spiritual war didn't end with the flood. It didn't end with the Nephilim. It didn't end when Moses led Israel out of Egypt. The war continued, just quieter, more hidden, and it continues now. That's what makes the book of Jubilees so haunting. It's not just retelling history, it's reframing it. It's saying, here's the version you were told, and here's what was really happening underneath. The solar calendar? Not just about dates, it's about alignment with a higher order. The patriarchs following divine law before Sinai. Not just a narrative twist, but a clue that divine wisdom existed long before it was written in stone. And Mastema, not just a villain, but a necessary mechanism in the divine machine. A reminder that evil isn't just loud, sometimes it's legal, sanctioned, strategic, and still watching. That's why the book of Jubilees was buried with the Dead Sea Scrolls. That's why it wasn't welcomed into the mainstream. Because it complicates things. It introduces a version of reality where everything matters. Not just what happens, but when, how, and under whose influence. It says there's a calendar ticking in the background of everything, a rhythm written by angels. And if you listen closely, you might realize we're still living on that clock. And just maybe, we're still being watched.